At this time, the main character just went about his business and came to the right place. As it turned out, the young man once again won a large gain in the lottery with the help of his ability, which opened after mutation. The employee was going to give the guy a check of 10 million, but our hero decided to laugh a little and put on a terrible mask. He was unhappy that the winner behaved so for the fourth time, so he again asked not to wear such a terrible mask. But our hero explained that he was in the process of accumulating good luck. After that, the guy immediately left, and the employees thanked him and asked him to go yet. When there were no people next to the main character, he was finally able to remove this mask. In fact, the guy was called Fan Xiao, and his superpower was that he knows how to accumulate his luck. If you have accumulated a lot of good luck, it can be lucky in 100% of cases, if you use everything at once. And thanks to this, he won the lottery 4 times and found financial freedom. To win in this lottery, he had to accumulate good luck for a month, at the cost of which there were constant clashes with pickpockets, thieves, merchants, and automobile accidents during this time. Now the protagonist thought about what would happen if he accumulates good luck for 2 months. In the end, the young man still decided to conduct this experiment, and now events are transferred 2 months in advance. The evening came and the main character decided to run a little in a local park. Fan Xiao did not even notice that all this time someone was watching him from neighboring bushes. In the end, the guy still felt that something was wrong and turned sharply. It turned out that this stranger was an evolutionist and was going to eat our hero in order to increase the level of his strength. Recently, Fan Xiao guessed that he would be a failure soon, but did not think that she would be so big. But the guy was prepared for such an occasion, so he bought himself a means for self-defense. The main character quickly took out a gas can and directed it directly towards the stranger. The distraught evolutionist did not have time to react to such an attack from the guy, so he received gas directly in the face. After that, he immediately shouted to the ground, and the young man continued to stand still and watch it. Our hero is just a rope displayed with him in order to resist to deal with this villain. A few minutes later, he called Yao Jiao Lin and reported that he wanted to call the police because he was attacked. Police officers quickly arrived at the place, so now events are developing in the department. The policeman, who was not the first time for the protagonist in this place, suggested drawing up a protocol. Fan Xiao calmly said that at the moment, he had unlearned 47 criminals and amounted to 112 protocols. The old man noted that the guy was still a lucky one and regretted that he had no talent to fight criminals, because this is a real annoyance for the police. Our hero has already learned that the villain is very strong and very similar to the evolutionist that was talked about on the internet. In fact, the policeman was sure that the evolutionist did not exist, so he asked the guy not to tell this nonsense. Fan Xiao decided to simply agree with the old man, because if he himself was not an evolutionist, he would never have believed all this. When the sun sat over the horizon, the guy finally figured out all the problems and left the police station. The protagonist thought about the fact that, having accumulated 2 months of luck, he fell under his attack of this face. But if not for his rich experience, then he would have had a long time to fall under the car. It all started after more than a month ago. Mutations occurred in the body of several people, which is why their food consumption has increased greatly. Physical training increased sharply. At the same time, they had a strong desire to hunt for all species of animals. People with such mutations are now called evolutionists. While Fan Xiao was in his thoughts, along the way he met a dog who paid attention to him. The dog was delighted when he saw the guy and approached him, wagging his tail. The main character immediately stopped and carefully looked at the animal that blocked his path. The dog was also not going to stay just like that, so she stared at Fan Xiao. It turned out that evolution also has its consequences for the protagonist, so now he behaved quite strange. It seemed to him that the dog Li Li looks very appetizing, so he had a desire to break her into pieces and enjoy the insides. After a few seconds, the young man was still able to recover and restrain his instincts, and the dog could not understand what was wrong with this person. Soon after, our hero was finally able to return to his cozy apartment. Fan Xiao, becoming an evolutionist, regardless of how much ordinary food he would not eat, he will never be able to get rid of the feeling of hunger coming from the depths of his heart, so he has to hunt animals. He was looking for at least some information on the internet, but all content related to evolutionists was simply deleted. The guy had already guessed that for some mutating people, appetite indulgence leads to the fact that they have to hunt people. The only problem was that our hero did not want to become a monster devouring people, so he hoped that luck accumulated in 2 months would throw him a decision. He decided not to hesitate with its use, so a bright whirlwind from the world sharply appeared in the room. Further, the guy was welded by the evolution game system and began to determine the path of the evolutionist nearby. After the discovery of Fan, Xiao was asked to choose the most suitable game profession from the list, which included a walking failure, a dark knight, and a killer. The main character immediately thought seriously, because the development of talent will depend on the game profession. A few minutes later, the young man nevertheless came to the decision that he would choose a murderer class. The system congratulated the guy on obtaining the playing profession of the killer and asked if he had a desire to develop his talent right now. Fan Xiao carefully read the note that his luck is also part of the strength and was delighted that he had just accumulated enough. After a few seconds, the loading of talent began, and the main character prayed that you get the best talent. Further, the system reported that he was able to get a talent of a rank under the name of the Killer Angel, and right now he had already aroused 3 original sins, which opened different skills for him. After reading the instructions, Fan Xiao concluded that this talent should be considered as that calloused, because Mikia negative emotions can call on a Killer Angel who owns the family original sins. He understood that he got a very strong ability precisely because he had to release good luck accumulated in 2 months. Suddenly, our hero saw a notification that in 10 seconds he would be redirected to the qualifying dungeon before he could become an official player. The task of this dungeon was that the player should find the temporary door G08-010-F1 and enter it to complete the registration with the official player. Having moved to this space, Fan Xiao sharply opened his eyes and tried to understand what had happened to him now. The main character continued to sit on the floor in bewilderment and looked around to assess the situation around. Only now the guy realized that the bag with self-defense tools was not sent with him to the dungeon, and guessed that the game was doing this for balance. At that moment, the young man saw that he was not alone here, and other players were already thinking about the fact that they received tips for the game. The tall man said that his players panel shows participation in the selection of the dungeon, like the student, whom he had already met. Then Fan Xiao looked the other way and saw that there were 3 more players there. The fragile girl was very frightened and hoped that all this was not real, and only needed to wake up. So this test was 2 sisters, one of which was worried, and the second, which was the eldest, tried to remain calm. Meanwhile, a man who was not against taking care of her stuck to that fragile, frightened girl. Because of this, she was scared even more, and with a cry asked the stranger not to approach her, not at all hiding her fear. From fright, the girl began to back, and unable to hold balance, simply fell to the floor. Due to fright and fear, she could not get up so quickly, and only shook with emotions that so suddenly covered her. The man really liked all this sight, so he was about to deal with this defenseless girl. The tall guy who stood nearby took him by the shoulder and emphasized that now the task of the dungeon is much more important, and not some girls. Meanwhile, one of the sisters noticed that in the lower right corner of the gaming panel there is a hint of time that suggested that it was now morning, and they could get out of the shelter. The young man offered just in case to wait until 8 hours because, following the hints, the monsters are hibernated only at 7:30. In turn, the main character suggested not to waste time at all, although there was no restriction in the task. But in reality, something can be hidden behind this. Fan Xiao explained that it was an abandoned lost city, and the possibility of getting food here is low. And without supplies, their energy will begin to gradually decline. Only now the fragile girl thought about it, and now she had the feeling that the complexity of the game suddenly increased significantly. The tall man agreed that our hero was right, so they should not ignore the problem of lack of food and hurry. In the end, the whole team gathered at the door of their shelters to go outside and see what was happening there. Fan Xiao noticed that one of the girls had a doll, and suggested that there was definitely something special in her, since I would also bring it to the dungeon. In addition, the guy suggested that among these 7 there may be evolutionists who eat people. 2 of them hid their distinctive features and caused the greatest suspicion, therefore, presumably, they could be such villains. After some time, all the participants went outside and so far no incidents occurred. Then they went to roam the abandoned city, where there was not a single person except the most subjects. The man noted that, it seems, the area of this city is not small, and if you use a carpet search, he did not even imagine how much this search would take. The student noticed that Weibai looks like a style on the city on Earth. Therefore, obviously there should be a station where the spatio-temporal door that they are looking for. The partner stopped the guy and explained that he believes too much, adding that they did not even know where the station is located here. Meanwhile, the man drew attention to the fact that our hero, judging by the previous discussion, has very developed thinking, so his opinion cannot be ignored. He decided to speak first, and with a smile asked what the Fan Xiao had the title. The young man answered indifferently that he had a standard of power. Meanwhile, his partner asked where they should move on in his opinion. The main character explained that they need a map, and the like should be in the subway, and, as a rule, part of the district is located on the map at the entrance. Another guy noticed that the entrance map and exits from the metro covers the small territory. But Fan Xiao explained that this is not necessary, since it is important for them to know how to get to certain places. Other players understood that they had no other ways, so they were going to follow the plan of Fan Xiao. Meanwhile, the eldest man had already begun to pester two sisters, but they were not going to give themselves offense. After half an hour, they were still able to find the entrance to the subway, but it was too dark there, so the team suggested that the monsters could hide here. The main character immediately set up matches that he could find along the way to get at least some light source. Very quickly, Fan Xiao made a homemade torch to safely go to the subway. The guy took a step forward, but the whole team was not so brave, so she still stood behind him. The man scaredly asked our hero to wait and so far not to go down. He listened to the darkness and, judging by someone else's breathing, concluded that there were about 4 monsters below. The student immediately lit up his eyes when he saw his comrade's abilities and asked what talent he had. The guy explained that talents should give out to each beta game, but his partner did not understand at all what the young man was talking about. Then the main character asked what animals the player hunted for, and he said that evolutionists were experiencing a strong desire for hunting, so he had to endure for 2 weeks, because of which he was at the limit. He said that after this break he bought a dog, and for some reason began to take off his hat from his head. It turned out that all this time, under his hat, dog ears were hiding, because he found the hearing and charm of the dog after this event. The student immediately began to run near his comrade and say that he was simply amazing. Then the protagonist, in all seriousness, asked what sensations after eating a raw dog. But the man could not understand what he was driving at. Fan Xiao decided not to answer this question directly and replied that he was just curious. In 1 second, the guy became very serious and came closer to his ally to ask another question. The main character, with an ominous nation in his voice, directly asked if a man had to eat a man. The man will be shocked by the fact that Fan Xiao asked him so strange and frank question. Fan Xiao was sure that the tall man would not lie if he had good acting abilities, but he still could not deceive the guy with his facial expressions. In the end, the guy said that this was just a joke, and explained that nevertheless, people are also animals. Therefore, perhaps there are cannibals among evolutionists. The student laughed and emphasized that our hero scared him with his joke, because he really thought that there was cannibal among them. Meanwhile, the tall young man asked everyone to stop indulging and finally doing business. But the girl did not consider it mandatory, because they were already aware that there were monsters. Fan Xiao proposed to continue their operation, because there is no point in looking for another place so as not to waste time. In the end, the man also agreed with our hero and invited everyone to finally go down. The fragile girl immediately fell to her knees, because she was too scared to go there in the darkness, and the man thought that his partners had completely crazy. After some thought, the guys were offered to try to enter another entrance to the subway, because there is a chance that there will still be no monsters. The main character invited the team to act at his discretion, and he was going to go inside to find the map. He was not particularly afraid of a clash, because he was going to use A-rank talent in battle if there was a danger. The guy had already gone quite far along the corridor and heard that someone was running after him. As it turned out, this was the tall man who asked our hero to wait. Even the girls still dared and were going to go to intelligence with Fan Xiao. The older sister explained that she wants to personally confirm the presence of a card, and Fan Xiao noted that caution is a good habit. The young man emphasized that he has a pretty good memory of E, and after they find the card, he will simply remember it and give it to his team. Suddenly, the younger sister, who clung to the eldest, seems to have seen something in the dark. She said in a frightened voice that there was a monster. She pointed her hand in the right direction. The main character immediately turned around and illuminated everything with a torch, because of which they still could see that someone was really sitting there. It turned out that it was a huge monster, which our team had not yet had time to wake. All players, they scaredly pressed against the wall and carefully watched the mutant. At that moment, Fan Xiao decided to look, and saw that they had already found a card. So he asked his partners to go inside. The protagonist brought the torch to the wall and said that the whole city of Weibei was depicted on this map. Everyone was very surprised that the guy remembered the card just looking at it for about a minute, and he explained that he had an involuntary memory. The girl was also able to remember a small passage of the card, so she made sure that Fan Xiao painted everything exactly with the original. Meanwhile, Other team members have already noticed that their comrades were able to get out of the metro. Students were very happy about this, that his partners were in order, and asked for forgiveness for his former ignorance. The girl explained that everyone needs to act together, helping each other to complete the assignment. But their partners retreated at the first danger, so they have no place in the team. The man immediately began to be indignant and tried to prove that he did not go down due to a feeling of danger. But she was not going to listen to him. Then he invited the girl to ask the opinion of the other 3 players who also refused to go down the subway. It seems that the tall guy did not share his partner's eyes and simply stepped forward, pushing him away. They, together with the girl, decided to apologize for their wrong act and asked for forgiveness, promising that in subsequent actions they would fully assist with their comrades. The student also joined them and admitted that he was a little chopped because he first encountered this. The man did not like the fact that none of the teams sided with his side, because of which he had to recognize the defeat. The girl calmly asked if he wanted to say something else in his excuse, but it was hard for him to add something. In the end, he apologized for his actions, but in his thoughts he was going to kill this girl, who dared to humiliate him so much at all. Finally, Fan Xiao intervened, who asked everyone to stop raising the noise, because it is still unclear whether they could get out of here alive. He said that they now have 2 cards, so they can be divided into groups, but the student was afraid of this, because in the horror films of people they always died after this. The protagonist said that there are 3 stations in Weibei, but walking for each together was a meaningless occupation, so it is more effectively divided into groups. The older sister said that they and the youngest would go to inspect the eastern station, and suggested that other members of the team choose themselves. The man was going to go with the girls because he was more interested in the station in the east, but the older sister immediately emphasized that they did not need extra help. Then he, with a grin and on his face, stated that he was going where he wanted, and the girl here does not solve anything at all. The older sister was not going to deviate from her position, and the man was angry because of this. At this moment, a man with dog ears intervened, who asked what his partner was about to do, and he explained that he had no restrictions, so he could choose any station. Fan Xiao realized that there was something was wrong, so he was also going to go east, so as not to leave his sisters alone with this suspicious old man. The man immediately thought that our hero was only going to show off before these girls. The young man explained that they did not need a map, because he remembered everything perfectly, and gave them to the other half of the team. A man with his ears turned to a tall guy, and emphasized that they were senior among the rest, suggested gathering their own detachments. The young man said that he was going to go north, and asked who would go with him, and the green-haired girl immediately answered his statement. In turn, the student was very happy that he could now be in a team with a man who impressed him from the very beginning. Now, having understood the teams, all test participants went in the right direction to get to the station. The man, not hiding his irritation, walked behind and angrily looked at the girl who behaved so daringly. At the same time, the sisters did not pay attention to him at all, and calmly went to their destination. In his head, an angry man already imagined how he would have lured these 2 girls right in the middle of the street, so that they would still recognize their mistakes. He could not stop thinking that these small girls actually behaved in front of him. The protagonist sharply grabbed his partner on his shoulder, because it seems that he began to feel his insidious thought. Fan Xiao, with a distraught gaze, asked what this was thought of a man who was now seriously scared. The protagonist guessed that the man believed that I was eating that both sisters were very appetizing and attractive, but he immediately pretended that he did not understand at all what the guy was talking about. Fan Xiao hinted that the man must have kept himself in his hands so as not to eat these beauties, and pretended to be cannibal himself. The old man was delighted when he found out that he was not the only one of his own way, and the young man continued to say that he also had to pretend, but now no one would arrange an ambush for them. Our hero pretended that he had an uncontrollable appetite, and he could no longer endure. But, of course, all this was a lie. The man was angry with only one thought, that he needed to restrain his hunger, because he would have long pounced on these girls. He also said that cannibal evolutionist loses his ability after eating a person, but because of this they surpass ordinary evolutionists in physical terms. Fan Xiao said that he mastered 5 abilities, but lost everything, and asked how much a man received, and he was surprised, because he believed that the maximum could get 3 talents. In the past, the old man ate a cat, a dog, and a pig, because of which the mutation occurred too quickly, and he almost lost his mind, starting to attack people, so he did not believe that the guy managed to eat 5 species of animals. Suddenly, one of the girls stopped abruptly because she heard some suspicious conversations behind her. The older sister was shocked when she realized that her partners actually ate people. Fan Xiao realized that their conversation was noticed, so he suggested that the man divide the sisters to each one at the same time, and chose the eldest for himself. The man immediately used his abilities and asked the protagonist immediately not to eat his victim, although she belongs to him. He stated that he wanted to have fun with the girls even in time, and was already ready to just break them. He warned that if all the sisters will cooperate, he would suffer less. But he also thought because it would be difficult for them to explain to the shelter when they come without 2 team members. For a second, the man even wondered if they should go to such a radical step. Our hero invited him not to worry about this issue, and offered to simply throw his sisters to the monsters when they deal with them, and say that during the search they accidentally woke a monster who dragged the girls. Fan Xiao emphasized that they were completely alien to each other, so no one was worried about only 2 dead strangers. The man laughed and noticed that the guy was quite smart, and meanwhile the older sister asked Garden to leave here and call someone to help to fight off these cannibals. The girl threw the doll towards her opponent and shouted so that her younger sister ran from here as soon as possible. The evolutionist Manhwa was confident in his abilities, so he did not believe that his victim could detain him. It turned out that the doll had some abilities, so the older sister used manipulation to resist her opponent. The girl made a sharp movement of her hand to control the doll, which now hung in the air. In the end, it turned out that this toy was as a weapon and was able to cut the man's face. The younger sister still has not left, because she was afraid for her elder, but she shouted again to finally run and brought someone here. Meanwhile, the man was able to simply break the doll and was very angry with the girl who dared to resist him. The older sister did not expect at all that everything would turn into this way. So now she just watched the movements of Cannibal. She did not have time to react to danger, so the man was able to grab her without problems. Because of his abilities, the evolutionist gained incredible power. So without any problems, he raised his victim above the ground. But everything was not so simple, because someone decided to pierce the man's body with an iron pin to save a defenseless girl. It turned out that this was the main character who decided to realize his cunning plan to life. Ultimately, the evolutionist cannibal could not withstand this wound and simply fell to the ground, letting go of the girl from his hands. The girl coughed due to the fact that the villain greatly grabbed her neck, and the frightened younger sister immediately ran up to her. Meanwhile, Fan Xiao received a notification, but did not even receive any reward for this, because this rogue had nothing in the inventory. Now the girl realized that our hero was not an evolutionist cannibal, but simply lured the information from their teammate. She asked at what time the guy had suspicions of their ally, and her younger sister was surprised that she was so starting a conversation with a suspect monster Junibal. The guy explained that he did not know the number of cannibal players, so he simply acted blindly and understood that they would not miss the chance to light a fire. The younger sister was sick of only one thought, that there were evolutionists who fell before eating people. In the end, the girl still decided to trust the main character, and suggested officially to get acquainted. She held out her hand with a smile and reported that her name was Lu Sinan, and her younger sister was introduced as Lu Baiki. Fan Xiao was not eager to say his real name, so he called the game nickname the Standard of Power, which offended the girl a little. Lu Sinan analyzed the situation and already guessed that from the very beginning our hero planned to create new opportunities so that the cannibals players would make a mistake. The guy explained that the cannibals did not show their fangs if they were acting in the team, because of which Lu Baiki was frightened, because she did not even think that other villains were present in the game. The protagonist confirmed this hunch and offered to go towards the guy in the hood and that fragile girl. But the sisters did not understand what to do for. Fan Xiao just said that it was quite appropriate, because he suspected that they could also be monsters cannibals, adding that this is just an assumption. Meanwhile, someone nearby fled with all his feet, as if fleeing someone. At this moment, the team of the protagonist just came out from around the corner, who did not suspect someone else's presence at all. It turned out that these were the same members of the team that our hero was about to find, and in their appearance it was possible to say that they were injured and scared. The guy noticed that it seems they came just in time, because their partners shouted that he had attacked a monster cannibal. Suddenly, both players pointed to each other and began to call each other a monster cannibal, which was very confusing. The main character kept calm and asked if they had any evidence. The guy in the hood said that the girl wanted to eat him, and even managed to bite off a piece of the dam of his hand. After that, the girl began to prove that it was he who was a monster, and bit off a piece of her flesh. Lu Baiki did not understand at all how to distinguish the enemy among these two players. but our hero replied that they should rely only on his intuition due to the fact that both had a wound. Lucenine agreed that they just needed to listen to themselves, but the younger sister was afraid that they were in a hurry. Meanwhile, the main character came closer to his teammates and wondered who he should choose from this couple. As a result, he pointed with iron reinforcement to a fragile girl and stated that he would trust her. The guy in a hood desperately tried to lure Fan Xiao to his side and said that this insidious woman was simply trying to blind him. Fan Xiao asked him to shut up and explained that he simply decided to choose this beauty, who exactly expected the death of the monster. He called the girl a little beauty and assured that he would fully support her side. It turned out that the guy only played his role, because after a few seconds, they suddenly attacked their partner, who was suspected of cannibalism. A shocked girl looked at the blade with fear, which was now sticking out in her chest. She screamed furiously, because now she realized that the main character was just playing with her. Lucenine had to understand the idea of a guy who was confident in her power, because they already have experience in fighting that fat man, an evolutionist. She thought that our hero is not only a smart guy, but also rather brave, because she did not even give her a sign to attack this girl. The main character did not look away from the girl who turned out to be a monster, and asked her to finally show his true form. Without wasting time, the girl decided to use her superpowers to join the battle with her rival. After a few seconds, she turned into a terrible giant and began to scream that she'd torture the devils from her team to death. Our hero realized that this girl was much stronger than that fat man, because she must have ate another evolutionist, so he immediately ordered her allies to go aside. All the team members began to run away from her with fear, but the evolutionist was not going to let his former teammates be so easy. Lucenine asked if the young man had some kind of plan, but he asked her just not to worry, because very soon the help would appear. The guy still ran a few meters ahead, and then braked sharply to finally prepare for a battle with Cannibal. The main character was not at all afraid, so he smiled broadly and said that they had come to the right place. He admired the courage of his rival, because she screamed so loudly again and again that she completely forgot to muffle her voice, and then asked if this place seemed familiar to her. The girl looked around and now perfectly understood what place Fan Xiao started her. At that moment, the monsters began to jump from the guy's back and he confirmed the guesses of his rival, not even hearing them. The evolutionist did not expect at all that our hero would be so cunning, and continued to shout that her allies were real channelers. Now Lucenine was not surprised that the guy decided to attack the opponent's leg, depriving her of her mobility. And all these monsters eventually simply entered the general plan. The mutated girl still tried to fight off the monsters, but the protagonist already decided that it was time to determine the winner in their battle. Fan Xiao wanted to finally finish all these showdowns and was going to apply his abilities. After a few seconds, an angel killer appeared from nowhere, who asked her master what she needed to do. She laughed fervently when she looked around and saw that nearby there was evolutionist and monsters, whom she called just toys. Fan Xiao immediately gave the girl called the team to go forward and attack all his opponents, which she was very delighted. In the next moment, the killer angel entered its combat uniform and rushed forward to protect its master. The cannibal girl, who was desperately trying to deal with her opponents, saw that another enemy was approaching her. Meanwhile, the angel only smiled slyly, about to end all her toys. At that moment, the Von Pencer was finally able to get out of the clutches of the monster and saw that the angel was approaching her more and more. But in the end, she did not manage to react to the attack from the side of the rival, so she received a lot of deep cuts on her body. The killer angel did not at all ceremony with his enemy and simply torn him into small pieces. Everyone around was simply dumbfounded by this clash, and could not even assume what happened before their eyes. At the same time, the monsters who were previously busy with the evolutionist rushed towards the protagonist in order to now attack him. They growled loudly and jumped high into the air, about to attach to a guy who continued to calmly stand still. The killer angel would not allow himself to allow the enemies to at least touch her master, so she was about to play with her next toys. As a result, all of these monsters quickly patted their heads, so they no longer posed a danger to Fan Xiao. The guy was absolutely confident in the power of the killer angel, so he motionlessly watched her work in battle. Then he just smiled and informed in his team that they had finally figured out all the enemies. Our hero again received a notification that he killed a player named Faye, but she did not have any objects, so he did not inherit anything. The killer angel hugged the owner tightly and asked to play more, and the guy felt that his physical strength had not changed, but he was tired spiritually, which meant that the assistant was using spiritual energy. The protagonist was no longer going to use the assistant in battle, so he clasped his fingers and ordered her to return. Lu Xinin was finally able to move away from the shock and asked if it was a young man's talent, and he understood that he had nothing more to hide, so he admitted that he could awaken a rather cruel skill. At that moment, our hero noticed that the wound on the guy's hand in the hood healed too quickly, so he asked whose talent it was. Lu Baiki said that she had a S-rank skill, so she could help with wounds, internal injuries, diseases, poisoning, or viral diseases. Then the guy asked what the skill of Lu Xinin was, and she said that she had the talent of the E-rank puppeteer. But now all this was useless, because the transferred doll was destroyed. Our hero asked if she could endure some other things except the doll. But the girl explained that she could transfer her only due to the fact that because of her talent, the game recognized the subject as part of her body. The girl offered to look for the station, but Fan Xiao had other plans because he wanted to meet the others, as he had already guessed where the spatio-temporal door was located. After some time, they arrived at the place, and the man with the ears was surprised that the allies were so bad in tactics, turning the game in pursuit of werewolves, but was grateful that they saved everyone from danger. The student asked how the study advanced, and Fan Xiao said that he had already received an answer to how to return to them. The man thought that these corpses and scattered newspapers were the answer, and Lu Baiki also did not understand why they dragged all this to their base. The main character explained that the newspapers that talked about the news before the destruction of the city were collected from the library and roadside newspaper kiosks and could help to understand what happened in the city at that time. But also the guy asked his partners not to rush, and asked if they want to hear the bad or good news. The comrades immediately strained and said that they would like to start with a bad one. Fan Xiao asked if the players felt at least something when they touched the monsters, and the men replied that he found out that monsters were extremely sensitive to sounds, and loved to sleep in places where there is no light. The guy in the hood understood that before going for reconnaissance, they should be prepared in advance for all these aspects, but our heroes would emphasize that they did not catch the most important thing. Meanwhile, Lu Xinin noted that the physique of monsters is like human. In fact, the main character just waited for someone to guess that the monsters were once people. Everyone was shocked when they learned the fact that these mutants were actually people. Our hero explained that they are outwardly different from people, but are still similar to cannibal evolutionists. And the most important thing is that their internal organs are exactly the same as in humans. The student came to the conclusion that a biochemical crisis occurred in this world, and Fan Xiao noticed that it was more appropriate to call it an evolutionary crisis. Fan Xiao suggested that this world was parallel to their native, and the newspapers collected by him were confirmation. In this issue of the newspaper, the main character read about the Stream Ultra Gluttons, a guy who lifted the car with one hand, and an illegal hunt for homeless cats and dogs. Now the student realized that in the future their world would also read such news from cannibals, evolutionists, and simply could not believe in it. Everyone could not believe that such a dark future was really waiting for them, and Lu Baiki cried, because she had not yet managed to find a beautiful guy. The protagonist asked his comrades not to be pessimists, since the denouement of the Day of Judgment reported by the Weibei Customs newspaper may not be so bad, because this is a warning for people. Lu Xinin was surprised to ask what such warnings the guy was talking about. He explained that this dungeon is used as a selection dungeon to tell each player about the future of evolutionists, and selected people will become the key to a change in this future. The guys were immediately delighted that they could become the saviors of the future, and hoped that they were now moving in the right direction. Lu Xinin saw that in his own words the protagonist revived the fighting spirit in the team's participants, because of which the young man became more attractive to her, although he was a little smug. Meanwhile, a man with ears asked what the good news was. Then Fan Xiao said that he managed to determine the location of the spatio-temporal door. Everyone was shocked by this news, and our hero invited his partners to guess on their own, because he had already given them all the necessary information. The student immediately gave up, because he perfectly understood that he was not particularly strong in solving riddles. In turn, a man with ears began to think about the fact that tips for stripping the dungeons in games are usually hidden in the most dangerous places. The guy in the hood suggested that monsters love to hide in dark places, so he admitted that the exit could be in the large underground parking of the shopping complex or in the sewer. Lu Baiki did not bother for a long time, and suggested that the exit could be in a regular zoo. It turned out that the stupid guess of the girl was the closest to the correct answer. The smart Lu Xinin thought that since it was not a zoo, it means their goal was the oceanarium, which gave her confidence in her guesses. She understood that the most dangerous place was where the boss was located, and the game gave them a hint that the dungeon boss refused to let out tourists. After that, The students still could not understand why they needed to go to the zoo or oceanarium. The man realized that the answer was simple because they were simply mistaken in assumptions, and there is no need to look for where there are more monsters. But it is worth considering how all these people became monsters. These monsters may have been evolutionists, so they ate too many animals, mutated in the animal side, and, when the food ended, went crazy, becoming those who are now. Consequently, in the city, the most animals are either in the zoo or in the oceanarium, which is why the extremely strong boss of the dungeons should have arisen in these two places. The protagonist was delighted that his partners were so smart, and confirmed that it was actually the oceanarium. He showed them a clipping of a newspaper that said that a large monster cannibal was discovered in the city oceanarium, so this area was now blocked. Now the student realized that Fan Xiao had long found the right answer, and all this time simply held the whole team in tension. The man with ears guessed that a heavy battle with the boss of the dungeon was waiting for them, and hoped that he would not be so strong. The guy in the hood began to worry, because he understood that our hero was strong, but clearly not stronger than their enemy. As if having read thoughts, Fan Xiao asked his comrade if he was tense because of the upcoming battle with the boss. In fact, the young man was afraid more because of his experiences that the leader of their team himself could simply begin to kill people. The main character warned the team that you should not worry, because, in his opinion, they did not need to enter into a direct battle, but simply prepare the bait. Now Lu Xinin guessed why the guy asked them to bring the bodies of defeated monsters in the shelter. The man already wanted to go to the boss as quickly as possible, but our hero stopped him and offered to gain strength, and tomorrow to go to inspect Oceanarium. He could not understand what was the problem, because now only the hour of the night, so there is still a lot of time, so as not to wait tomorrow. Fan Xiao calmly explained that he was tired and wanted to relax, but would not stop his comrades if they go there right now. In fact, there was a problem in the fact that until the Cool Dawn Killer Angel has not expired, the guy would not dare to meddle to the boss of the dungeon, and in addition, he had some guesses regarding their enemy. Lu Xinin agreed with the guy's opinion, so she decided to relax too, and the younger sister decided to follow the eldest. The guy in the hood and the student also decided that they would go tomorrow because they did not want to go without such strong fighters. A man with ears listened to his comrades and came to the decision that they would be advanced to the oceanarium tomorrow. All the same, his patience was not enough for a long time. So early in the morning, he already shouted that they needed to urgently advance. The main character was still in no hurry and offered to wait a little more. But the partner did not like it, because they just did not have enough food for one more day. Fan Xiao invited his comrade to go forward if he was in a hurry, because he himself could not take risks, since the talent of the Killer Angel was not completely updated. The man was very angry due to such a reaction of our hero, so he asked other team members what they think about this. The rest of the guys also agreed with Fan Xiao, because they have already determined the location of the spatio-temporal door, so they do not need to rush anywhere. Now, a man with ears realized that he had nowhere to find support in order to finally go to their goal. Meanwhile, the main character finally decided to get up from his place, and Lu Xinin continued to carefully observe him. She began to guess that the problem was that the guy's frightening talent had cooldown for a whole day. Our hero was burnt and explained that he did not deliberately drag out time, proposing first to collect corpses. After that, he was already advanced for reconnaissance. After some time, our whole team came to the oceanarium, which looked as destroyed and gloomy as possible. Lu Baiki immediately tensed and was even afraid to assume what happened to the local oceanarium. Meanwhile, her older sister reported that she was lucky to find one doll, which helped them easily transfer the corpses to this place. A man with ears emphasized that everything would be easier if some had not insisted on deposit and time until 3 p.m. The student noticed that there were many dark sections inside this building, and it is still unknown whether there is a spatio-temporal door there, so this mission will definitely be too dangerous. The protagonist did not scare all these details at all, so he suggested first conduct reconnaissance. According to the internal type of building, everyone immediately concluded that the oceanarium was abandoned for a long time. The student noticed that various photos were hanging everywhere, and Lu Xinin explained that there was probably an exhibition center here, which showed photographs from tourists and workers. At that moment, the girl noticed that Fan Xiao was considering something carefully, and thought that he had already managed to find some kind of clue. It turns out that for some reason the guy looked at the photo, where a diver with a mermaid was depicted against a huge octopus. Looking around, Lu Baiki suggested that, apparently, it was very beautiful before destruction, Meanwhile, the student joyfully asked everyone to approach him because he had already managed to find the Oceanarium card. He pointed to the right place and emphasized that there was a spatio-temporal door under the number G08-010-A1. A guy and a man with ears immediately hurried to this place, so as not to lose for a second. In the end, following the Oceanarium map, the whole team came to the hall where the big basin was located. It took them only a few seconds to notice that the door of the G08-010-A1 really was in this place. The main character also saw this but asked not to rejoice ahead of time. And in the meantime, a man with ears said that he had heard something underwater, which was very large. He calculated that from the edge of the hall to a metal platform with a door of about 20 meters, so you will have to swim. And if the monster is taken to the bait, they have a chance. But only if they act with all their might. Lu Baiki immediately warned that she did not know how to swim, which became a serious problem for their team. Lu Xinin could not throw her younger sister, so she stated that she would swim with her, and our hero immediately offered to use the doll to transfer the girl through the air. She explained that the puppeteer follows the laws of physics, so for lifting a person he needs to withstand the weight of 2, which is why the effect will be worse than if she simply sailed with her sister. The man believed that he would not go, because the sisters would only slow them down. So he suggested that the youngest deal with this herself. But Lu Xinin was in no case going to do this. He was sure that the girl was quite smart, so he should know that it was dangerous to take the water with her, one who does not know how to swim. Fan Xiao decided to intervene in this intense conversation, and suggested that they take both girls with them. He was not going to play himself a saint, but if the sisters did not come with them, given the explosive character of Lu Xinin, they would in any case disturb the monster who would try to kill them after that. A man with ears understood that the main character was right in his statements, so he could not say anything else towards the girls. Lu Baiki tried to invite her sister to go without her, but the girl was determined and confirmed the words of Fan Xiao. Suddenly, the protagonist began to come closer to the sisters, because of which Lu Xinin tensed, because she did not know what he was up to. It turned out that the guy would all want to grab Lu Baiki in his arms to transfer her to the other side. Fan Xiao explained that refusing the weak is not always the best option, and he swam well and could just take the girl with him so that at that time the older sister pushes them with a doll. After that, the guy ordered everyone to prepare to jump into the water, and meanwhile, the girl was happy that his brother was such a good person. Meanwhile, a man with ears was very unhappy that the whole team again refused to listen to his opinion. After the command from the protagonist, everyone immediately began to drag the corpses closer to the water. I will throw water into the last bodies. The guys could finally breathe calmly, because all this was a difficult occupation. After that, all the participants in full readiness stood on the edge of the pool and watched what would happen next to these bodies. Suddenly, tentacles appeared from under the water, which were going to grab the treat that our team prepared for them. After that, the boss began to actively move, which is why he rocked the water in the pool. The guys shockedly watched this, because all this meant that the main boss of the dungeon appeared right at this second. Meanwhile, the main character gave a team and asked all the guys to jump into the water right now. The partners understood that they could not lose a second in such a tense situation, so they quickly followed Fan Xiao. The main character dived under the water, so he asked Lu Baiki, whom he held in his hands, hold his breath. After that, the guy decided to look around a little to see what was the situation around. Then Fan Xiao saw that all the team members were quietly floating nearby, which gave him confidence in their security. The main character realized that someone was missing, and this person was a man with ears, which, similar, were. This team participant remained on the shore and now thought that the guy was right and made the right choice. He decided to throw the stone into the water to attract a monster again, who would definitely attack his former teammates. The main boss, as expected, immediately escaped from the water, so all participants had to escape from it like that. Lu Baiki immediately looked at the guy in dismay because she could not understand what had just happened. As it turned out, Fan Xiao, in his own words, inspired a man with ears, and he decided that while someone was creating problems, everyone could not leave. So he showed the initiative, and wanted to go through this level without allies. Only now the team saw that one of their comrades decided to sacrifice all of them into their salvation. In the end, they all did not have time to react to danger, so the monster was able to grab them without problems in their tentacles. The last second, the main character was still able to get a weapon and cut one tentacle, but now he understood that they had no other way out, except to fight. Meanwhile, a man, without any shocks of conscience, stood on the edge of the pool and watched how the final boss grabbed his comrades. It was at this moment that he decided that now there was a right time to break through in one breath. Lu Xinin noticed that their former partner was going to do, so she was not going to leave everything in this position. She was not going to give a man to leave, having driven all their trap, so she used her puppeteer skills. The main character asked the girl not to be distracted by the traitor and use her talent to deprive the monster of the eye, but she could not control her emotions and insults to a man with ears. In the end, she left a former partner and, using the doll control, fulfilled the request of Fan Xiao. After that, the final boss was very angry. So the defenseless doll did not even have a chance to survive his revenge on his eyes. The guy in the hood said that the student had fainted, so he asked him to help him. Fan Xiao asked his comrades to wait a minute. And in the meantime, Lu Beqi began to worry, because she thought that all this happened because of her. Lu Xinin had already managed to take possession of the attention of the monster, so she could not understand why our hero did nothing. At the same time, a man with ears was already able to swim to the door without any problems, and was now sure that he made the right decision, sacrificing the whole team. Suddenly he felt that his hands and legs no longer obey him, so he could not overcome the last few meters before the exit. The man heard some strange song, and began to suspect that everything was precisely because of it. After some time the mermaid swam to him, and now he began to guess that it was a true boss of the dungeon. The beauty fascinated her sacrifice with her song and look, so he without problems fell into her arms. But after a few seconds, the mermaid showed her true appearance, about to enjoy a man with ears. As a result, only a small red spot on the water remained from the man. Despite how he tried to escape from this dungeon by any means, the angry monster continued to shred a doll, which hurt him, but none of the team has yet taken any action. Lu Xinin began to panic because she did not understand why the guy still did nothing, and began to suspect that his talents had not yet been updated. Our hero said that there was very little left, and asked the girl not to be angry with him. All this time, the young man carefully watched the place where the mermaid dealt with the traitor of their team. At this moment, he realized that he managed to find the true final boss, so you can go to action. Now the main character. I decided to call the killer angel to deal with all the rivals. The guy indicated which direction to move his assistant in order to find the right underwater monster. In turn, the killer angel was very happy that her opponent had such a strong aura that made their upcoming battle even more interesting. She quickly entered the water, where the opponent was supposed to be. And in the meantime, the mermaid instantly reacted and attacked the enemy with a sound wave. The killer angel did not stop this at all, so she was able to break through this attack without any problems. Ultimately, the underwater beauty did not even have time to react to how her body instantly shredded into small pieces. At the same time, another monster saw that the killer angel was so cruel to the mistress, because of which he got angry even more. He immediately distracted from our heroes and began to scream loudly because of despair, not hiding his emotions. The protagonist, without losing, not time from above, I decided to use this moment and cut the monster tentacles to free all his partners. After that, Fan Xiao grouped and inflicted a fatal blow directly into his opponent's stomach, completing this fierce battle. In the last seconds of his life, the monster tried to catch up with our hero, but he was faster and was able to evade this attack. At that moment, the angel killer decided to join the battle, who resisted the enemy and defended her owner. After that, our heroes jumped on one of the pieces of tentacles to take their breath after a collision. The monster certainly could not survive after such a powerful attack, so now he just went underwater. Lu Xinin was delighted that the battle was finally over, and now tried to reassure her younger sister, who was seriously scared. After that, the system said that our hero was able to successfully kill the boss, so after the closing of the dungeon, he will receive an exclusive award. Now the guy could take a breath with a calm soul, because all the trials were currently completed. Lu Xinin decided to ask how he could find out that there was another monster underwater. The main character explained that he simply guessed, and recalled the photograph he looked at the beginning. It turned out that the young man had already seen this pair in the newspaper, which he had previously brought to their base. On the other page, an incident was conducted with evolutionary cannibals, which was associated with the oceanarium. So Fan Xiao immediately attracted the attention of the attention. The newspaper called the monster the goal of increased danger, because after the man managed to eat most of the inhabitants of the oceanarium, he greatly mutated. At the same time, the main character recalled that the monster man, which was reported in the newspaper, had the abilities of the octopus. The guy thought that it was not he ate people, but another monster Junable. But when he saw a photo of the couple in the oceanarium, Fan Xiao realized that his conclusion could still be true. Lu Sinin realized that our hero had long known that there were actually two monsters, and even intentionally hinted that that person could strike them in the back, forcing him to show the initiative. Then he explained that he did not force the man to choose, because the best option for everyone was work together, but he preferred betrayal. The protagonist emphasized that in such places people reveal their most gloomy intentions, so he did not want to call himself fair, but did not consider himself an egoist either. And besides, he was sure that Lu Sinin would have acted absolutely the same if they had not taken a younger sister with them. The girl confirmed the words of our hero, but she was always sure that everything would be fine with her younger sister. Fan Xiao was surprised, and could not understand where there was such confidence in her words. The girl explained that Lu Baiki always accompanied luck, so she was not the first to find herself in a hopeless situation, as it was today. The main character could not understand how luck could be so ridiculous that someone was so lucky, and Lu Sinin suggested talking about this alone. The guy agreed and thought that perhaps his luck is not so remarkable, because there are people like him. Since he ended up here, he noticed that in the shelter, luck accumulates 10 times faster than in the past, so there was already a great success here. It also means that while remaining 2 days here, our hero can accumulate good luck in 20 days, and even if the threat is posed by life, he can spend the accumulated luck that to pass the dungeon alive. After some time, his thoughts, Fan Xiao suggested finally to leave this bad place, but Lu Sinin asked him to wait a bit. The young man stopped and turned to see why the girl behaved so strangely. It turned out that the girl just wanted to thank the protagonist for helping their team, so other participants also joined her and said thanks to Fan Xiao for the salvation of their meager life. And the guy himself, seeing such gratitude, decided to admit and say how his name was actually. Lu Sinin tried to restrain her anger because she did not expect at all that all this time the young man had used a fictional name. Others began to notice that they knew the name Fan Xiao, and he explained that they could see his name in the news, because there were several cases of the struggle against criminals with his participation. The girl could not stop thinking that our hero was so talented that he was able to find every accurate hint in the dungeon, was able to predict people's intention and use it. Lu Baiki asked the guy to leave her contact, because her sister asked for it, then to talk in private. The older sister immediately took the girl because she put her in an awkward position, but Lu Baiki still promised to call our hero. Now the student kindly envied Fan Xiao, and the guy in the hood noted that it was worth not only to envy, but also to fear such a strong person. In the end, the protagonist said that he had to leave, so he said goodbye to the guys and promised to see herself someday. After passing the dungeon, our hero successfully registered as an official player, and he also had no records of assimilation of foreign genes, so the status of a noble player turned out. After completing the assignment, an automatic return occurred, so the guy was at home. Fan Xiao checked that all the items available with them disappeared, then appeared again, and also looked that there were only 4 hours, which meant that in the dungeon the time was completely different. In addition, the guy did not notice that the feeling of hunger disappeared. Therefore, we can say that he got rid of the pernicious habit of, there are animals. Meanwhile, the system reported that the assessment of the passage of the dungeon was S, so the guy receives 3 spatio-temporal tickets, 3 evolutionary potions, 3 antidote bottles, and 5,000 game coins. Also, for the murder of the final boss, he received anemia earring, so Fan Xiao quickly pressed the button to get all the awards. After a second, the smallest D-rank earring appeared on the ear of the protagonist. This jewelry made it possible to control its own blood and turn it into cold weapons, merge with other creatures, as well as control the blood through the air at a distance of 50 meters. Then our hero decided to use disposable consumables, namely the potions of evolution. He decided to test his characteristics, and the system reminded that he should participate in the dungeon once a month. Otherwise, he will be teleported to a complex dungeon as a punishment. Fan Xiao noticed that with 3 bottles of potion, and the speed of evolution increased by 11%, but he did not expect that players could improve their talent after increasing the rank. At that moment, the guy saw that he had a call from an unknown number, but he immediately guessed that it was Lu Baiki. It turned out that it was precisely the older sister, who reported that they had already returned home, and once again thanked the guy. He asked why the girl called if she had already thanked him, but Lu Sinin was embarrassed and did not know what to say. In the end, the girl reminded that earlier, our hero wanted to know about the luck of her younger sisters. Behind all these events, the main character almost forgot about this conversation, but he realized that if such people exist, this should be taken seriously. Lu Sinin said that after the birth of the sister, their family developed steadily, but from childhood to growing up, the girl faced many strange deaths, remaining unharmed. Lu Baiki began to worry because, it seems, her older sister exaggerated a little. The guy agreed that her luck was too good, and, according to the girl's assumption, a pop-up window was supposed to appear in front of her. But Lu Sinin did not hear this. Meanwhile, Lu Sinin asked what the talent of our hero was, and suggested that he could control the air. Now Fan Xiao realized why the girl decided to talk to him, but he was not going to tell any information about her strength. She immediately wanted to make excuses, and said that she wanted to talk about the fact that they received another invitation to the dungeon, suggesting that they would be able to get into one test, if they used a ticket at the same time. The girl began to annoy the fact that the protagonist was so cunning and was still aware of them. She said that she and her sister have tickets to the station of the veranda of Star Thoughts, and our hero had the same ticket and also a pass to Rose Street. After that, the comrades knocked out the results of all the objects that they received, but Fan Xiao still believed that they had too little information. After all this discussion, Lu Sinin invited the guy to cooperate. It turned out that they have the same ticket, but would have to wait a couple of days, because she was going to sew a few special dolls. The young man replied that he was in no hurry, so he asked his sisters to contact him when they dared to go to the dungeon. He finished this call, and was now thinking about the fact that he could form a pretty good team with the girls, in which the healer will also be present. Having dealt with all these matters, the guy decided to engage in raising the killer angel. He saw that now the assistant received the original sin of anger, and received a new weapon that instills the attacks, bypasses all the defense systems, and directly affects the damage. The next day, Fan Xiao decided to draw the team members who turned out to be evolutionist cannibals, and was glad that his drawing skills had not yet decreased. Right in the morning, guests decided to visit the main character, but he expected it to once happen. Fan Xiao quickly got up from the table and went to the door to open the door to unexpected guests. It turned out that it was an old man from the police who suggested that the young man was waiting for their visit, because he went to the door too quickly. The main character perfectly remembered about yesterday's attack of the evolutionist, so he expected this sooner or later. The assistants of the policeman were surprised when they heard about the evolutionist, because they believed that these were just rumors from the internet. They could not understand where such confidence in the words of Fan Xiao, so he directly decided to declare that he himself was an evolutionist. The policeman did not expect to hear such a recognition from the protagonist, so I did not even know how to answer it. In the meantime, the guy asked not to go through all these procedures, and said that yesterday he participated in the qualifying dungeon, where he met two cannibals players who were already methods, and handed them over their portraits. The assistants immediately noted that the sketches were amazing, and agreed that this would help them reveal some killings. Du Zhou immediately wanted to get acquainted with our hero, and introduced himself and the assistant to Yanzhen, extending his business card, on which it was written that he works in the Bureau for Special Incidents. He explained that they belonged to the department created by the state just a month ago. Now this bureau was responsible for the questions related to evolutionists, players in the game Evolution. Fan Xiao asked if Officer Van knew about the circumstances, but Du Zhou replied that he had recognized everything recently, and the old man himself simply could not believe that the guy constantly falls into such strange situations. Du Zhou said that they had already arrested that attacked of our hero, an evolutionist cannibal, and asked to show the guy his type of player. Then the employee of the bureau asked to describe how other people who passed the qualifying dungeon looked with him, but Fan Xiao was not going to hand over his partners. Du Zhou hinted that the young man should not have the patience of the bureau, and the guy understood that he would have to assist if he would be forced to force him. He also added that the appearance of the game will affect the existing social structure, and the more time it will pass, the more it will affect. In fact, the bureau planned to recruit each player, because in the future they will definitely become an important strategic resource. The main character replied that he would think about this decision, because he still had some doubts. In the end, Du Zhou simply handed his business card and asked the young man to call when he decided. He explained that his phone number is indicated there, as well as the account number and the corresponding password on the bureau website. After that, the employees left the house and discussed that the probability of joining the protagonist to their organization was quite large, so this would be a good help in the future. Du Zhou planned to at least persuade the guy to cooperate if he does not want to fully join the organization. When they got into the car, the man remembered that he needed to ask the sniper and the combat group to leave the perspective. After a few seconds, the sniper, who was sitting on the next roof all this time, received a team about the abolition of the liquidation of the target. But everything was not so simple, because the door already had a killer angel, which meant that Fan Xiao guessed everything. The devil was glad that she could play with people and cheerfully sang a song about it. In fact, Fan Xiao did not allow her to kill the soldiers that she really did not like it. But the guy did not plan to touch people until they wanted to be evil. The killer angel was offended by its master, so she just sighed with resentment, not hiding her disappointment. The young man decided to finish this conversation and suggested that he prepare for the next dungeon. On a ticket to Rose Street, a detailed description of the route was indicated, which indicated that it was necessary to find the spatio-temporal train G083301. After this meeting, Fan Xiao decided to go to the roof of one of the buildings when a deep night came. It turns out that they checked a new ability that allowed the angel killer to move the protagonist at a distance of about 10 meters. Fan Xiao concluded that the addition of this weapon, turned from anger, has become a purely home tourist murder weapon. The guy decided not to torment his assistant anymore and let her go so that she had a good rest after all these training. He has already tested almost all his abilities, so he decided that it was time to go to a new dungeon. Our hero went to the station of a spatio-temporal train, and in the meantime, the system warned him that the train arrives in 5 minutes. Now Fan Xiao realized that this time he would not fall directly into the shelter, but would take advantage of the train for which he was given a ticket. Suddenly, someone familiar appeared next to the guy, and was surprised that Fan Xiao was also going to the dungeon. It turned out that it was Du Zhou, who noticed that our hero could not restrain himself from curiosity at all and decided to try one more time. The young man doubted very much that the usual coincidence had now happened. He warily asked what the probability that they were so accidentally in one dungeon. Du Zhou explained that the spatio-temporal train will pass through many stations, each of which has many dungeons, so they are unlikely to be so lucky. Then the guy decided to take the opportunity and talk about what he saw on the official website of the Bureau for Special Incidents, that there is a trading platform where you can exchange tickets. The employee did not tell anything because trading requires real contacts between the players who are in their organization. Meanwhile, at the station there was a notification that the train arrived in the spatio-temporal train, which was heading to the end station of the fairy tale City of Illusions. The players were asked not to attack train workers, and warned that if the train is faced with danger, players who will help have a chance to get special awards. In the end, our hero admitted that he was going Happy Hotel, and, as it turned out, Du Zhou was also heading to this place. Fan Xiao was increasingly assuring that this coincidence was too successful, so he suspected that the Bureau simply followed him, because of which the task needed to be completed as expected. After that, our hero and his acquaintances took their places on the train, in which they were not alone. The guy immediately noticed that there were quite a few people here, and suggested that the rule is not forbidden to play private duels to pay resources. At that moment, an employee approached them, who invited the main character to view the menu of their train. The guy saw that 1 cup of coffee costs 50 gaming coins, which was quite expensive. But Du Zhou said that he would treat his new acquaintance. Fan Xiao thanked him for his generosity, and after a few minutes he enjoyed a cup of hot coffee. He immediately noticed that the drink was very unusual, and read that there is even a combination of 9 dimensions, which has the name of the general catering of 9 arts. Du Zhou explained that everything is real here, and explained that it was not just a fake boot page in front of the entrance to the dungeon. The Bureau employee thought that this is probably some kind of gap where various temporary spatial lines intersect. Hearing this, Fan Xiao immediately thought about the fact that passengers on this train could be from other worlds that are different from their them. Du Zhou said that when ordering food, he bribed the maintenance personnel to get a little information, and the most valuable one was related to the number of space at the time station. He explained that the G08 means a spatial temporal node number, 010 was the number of the world zone, and the last numbers were the station number. Now the protagonist learned that all the parallel worlds on which they travel are divided by numbers. Meanwhile, they heard an emergency announcement of the award, which immediately aroused interest. Passengers reported that the super player of the state, who killed senior employees of the gaming company, was seen in the G08 node, and players can find it to receive a reward. Fan Xiao was surprised that the gaming company cannot directly punish players, and his partner explained that they simply could not completely control the game, which was pretty good for the players themselves. He asked Du Zhou Li knew something about super players, but he emphasized that he was not an encyclopedia, because just a month ago he began to play. At this moment, there was a notification that they had already arrived at the Rose Street station, which is why our hero was surprised that they arrived so quickly. When they left the car, the guy immediately thought about what would happen if they continued the trip, but no one knew about it. Du Zhou immediately warned that it was worth thinking whether he had the strength to violate the rules. Otherwise, the consequences could be too serious. After this conversation, Our heroes seem to have disappeared to eat in the air, teleport to the place of their mission. The system immediately reported that the dungeon called the Happy Hotel was now open. The background of this place was that the guests began to complain that an unpleasant smell appeared in their rooms, after which the employees began a thorough investigation and found the body in the mattress. The body was quickly removed, and the smell disappeared. But strange events began at the hotel, as the guests complained about steps in the corridors at night, and some saw the woman's silhouette in a red dress with her hair loose. The hotel guests began to disappear one after another, and the smell appeared again, after which the employees found the bodies of missing people in mattresses of other numbers. People believed that the victims of the killer hidden in the mattress turned into an evil spirit who wanders around the hotel, kills new guests and hides their bodies into mattresses, repeating their fate. The general task of the dungeon was that the player should just live in a happy hotel. Fan Xiao stood his back, so he did not notice that more and more people began to approach the hotel. Among this whole crowd, as expected, was also familiar to the main character Du Zhou. A girl appeared in front of them, who reported that they were the last group of players who was sitting in this dungeon, in which 12 people participate in total. One of the guys wanted to immediately go to the hotel because he treated this task completely carefree, but someone stopped him. It turned out that one woman was very nervous due to the fact that she did not trust anyone and suspected that there were cannibal players among them. She asked first to prove that they were not monsters, otherwise she was by no means going to go to the hotel. This woman repeated her question whether someone knew about whether there were cannibals players here. One couple could not understand who this woman was and were not going to prove anything to her. The woman was very angry when she heard that she was called Ugadina and thought that everyone here was cannibals. She tried to prove to other participants that these two did not want to prove their personality, so they can be dangerous. She offered to catch them right now and eliminate the threat in advance if they all want to be eaten. The main character could not understand why they had to do everything for a stranger, so he invited her to act independently, but she did not like it. So she wrote Fan Xiao in the list of cannibals. Fan Xiao emphasized that they are not obliged to clean this hotel from cannibals, so it is better to simply ignore all this, because no one is going to sacrifice their lives. He decided to play along and asked who would come out against him, even if he was cannibal in truth. The woman informed other players that the main character himself confirmed everything, but no one was going to follow her. Meanwhile, Fan Xiao did not pay attention to all these showdowns and calmly went to the hotel, and Du Zhou tried to catch up with his friend. The bureau employee could not understand why our hero behaved like that because he was a white player, and now he just quarreled the whole team. He explained that Nolene players have distinctive features, and he, as a white player, cannot just explain something. So he planned to establish at least some authority before accusing someone. Our hero was sure that this woman was not trying to eliminate the threat at all, but simply wants to create a turmoil and understand who has what forces have to protect herself. In the end, all the players went to the hotel and saw a huge hall in front of them. Fan Xiao immediately noticed that no one had been in this place for a long time and asked how they would be distributed, because only one person can be on one floor. The man asked what floor Miss wants to occupy, who told them about the task, and she replied that she would like to get the 7th floor. The guy noticed that they came almost simultaneously, so he invited them to unite in the team and look after each other. Little by little, all the players began to negotiate and choose the floors for themselves, promising to help each other in case of trouble. Meanwhile, Du Zhou invited our hero later to decide on which floor they would remain, but for now it is possible to examine all floors and find some information related to the evil spirit. The daring guy heard the conversation of our heroes and thought that they had gone crazy if they were going to share at the hotel where a real ghost lived. Fan Xiao continued to play his role as a villain, so with an ominous smile he suggested that he go in search of Together. Of course, the guy did not want to anger the possible cannibal, explained to her that he simply did not agree with the division, advising our hero not to climb to him. At the same time, others calmly discussed that the evil spirit begins to act every evening from 9 hours, so they do not need to hesitate and postpone the search for information. Fan Xiao saw that most players agreed with this thought, so he suggested that the search for information quickly start. Du Zhou decided to ask the guy what he was thinking about whether the evil spirit was real or not, but he replied that there was too little information for some conclusions. After that, the protagonist said that he was going to go to the 13th floor, and Nizhny leaves him to his comrade. Fan Xiao noticed that this guy is really like a glue patch, and began to suspect that most likely this is some kind of test from the Bureau for Special Incidents to check it. He decided to go into the first issue in his path, and immediately saw that no one was here for a long time, so it is hardly possible to find some light clues. The guy decided that now is the time to try his reward in the form of anemia earrings, because there was no longer any sense in waiting for some light tips. In the end, he was able to show some strange stains of blood that were printed on the curtains of this number. The main character immediately decided to disrupt them, because it could obviously be a hint for their mission. The guy was delighted that this earring was useful because it could not only control blood, but also control its oxidation and drying. Meanwhile, other players gathered in the hall and discussed what traces they could find on their floors. Dujo concluded that this dungeon was clearly opened more than once. Therefore, perhaps the other players used to take part before and left traces of the battles behind. Some could not find any clues at all, and the daring guy just noticed that only the main character was not enough among all. Just at that moment, Fan Xiao went down the stairs with curtains in his hands and stated that he had found something interesting. The protagonist demonstrated his find, on which it was written that the spirit cuts off his head to everyone who reacted to a chair. Everyone was worried about it, because they immediately guessed that these were traces of players who participated earlier, but could not survive. Miss remembered that in the description of the dungeon it was mentioned that the evil spirit looks like a woman in a red dress, and the cut of the heads was the method of attacking the evil spirit. The woman hoped that the players who entered before were all killed, and admitted that in the end there was only one person who wrote the text found by the main character. The guy suggested that probably there was no complete destruction, because according to the literal meaning, the heads were chopped off only those who knocked on the door. Having combined all these evidence, Dujo admitted that only those who hear a knock on the door from the word of the spirit would be attacked and deprived of their heads. The rest can calmly survive all 3 days. At the same time, the man understood that it depended only on luck was too unreliable, so he proposed uniting and fighting together with an evil spirit. Another lesson agreed with this idea, because the more people, the more strength, and the evil spirit may not be able to defeat them. The young man emphasized that only one person can live on the floor, and the offender will become the first goal of the spirit. But the woman offered to settle together all the same, in order to defeat the spirit with general efforts. The main character listened to the ideas of all the players, and now asked the woman not to delay the rest of this pool. The guy believed that she thought painfully beautifully, and does not take into account any important details in her plan. The woman again switched to aggression and asked what the main character had in mind, speaking these words in her direction. Fan Xiao calmly explained that the knock of the door concerns only some players. That is, there is a chance that some will be able to survive 3 days in absolute safety, and if you listen to her plan, they can die in 1 second. In addition, a clash with an evil spirit does not necessarily mean inevitable death, because those traces of the battles that they found can be interpreted as players' attempts to resist. In the end, the players decided that they would still live one at a time and not violate the rules. Trusting their luck, Miss also agreed that it is better for them to follow the rules and live separately, as everything was planned from the very beginning. Fan Xiao invited everyone to return to their numbers, since everyone came to a common decision, and warned that if someone decides to violate the rules and stay together, then it would only be their personal business. The woman still desperately tried to prove that our hero wanted everyone to act in one, and thus facilitated work on his hunt for her victim. In fact, the guy was sure that the rules of the game themselves would destroy the violators if they still begin to live together. He also did not know if there was an evil spirit in this building, but he was sure that there was always one next to him, which was definitely stronger than their enemy. The guy eavesdropped that the man and woman who were located on the 6th and 7th floors planned to make noise if something happens to attract attention. Another young man also heard this and asked to join their union in order to save each other. Such a nasty woman also joined them. But the man who started all this did not like such a development of events, because he wanted to be alone with a beauty. In fact, Miss himself did not care, because the more people, the better. But it seems that the older man and the young man together laid their eyes on her, so rivalry increasingly increased between them. The protagonist, seeing this group of players, thought that there would definitely be no danger from them, because they already had an internal conflict. He noticed that the rest continued to simply be silent, so it is difficult to understand what was quite alarming. But there was something else that caused the headache of Fan Xiao, because he had a little more problem. The guy perfectly understood that Du Zhou had to go to his 12th floor, but for some reason he went to him to the 13th. In the end, the bureau employee explained that he had some business to our hero, so he offered to sit down and discuss it. They went into the room, and Du Zhou offered to chat a little while there was time until 9 a.m. The guy pretended not to mind this conversation, but he could not just drive his acquaintance. Meanwhile, the comrade decided to remind you that at the entrance to the hotel, the main character hinted that he could be a Junable player. and asked if it was all this to catch someone on the bait. Fan Xiao replied that he was doing this in order to have fun a little, because it was not a fact that this would give a result. At the same time, he suspected that a little man, a tattoo, and a bald man could be cannibal players, although this is so imperceptibly. The guy explained that everyone else is too active, and it is immediately clear that they could not hide their intentions. And these three were silent all the time, so they looked suspicious. Ultimately, Dujo proposed to finish the conversation about cannibals, because he came here for a completely different reason. In fact, the bureau employee began to suspect that the young man painted those bloody traces on the curtains with his own hands. Fan Xiao hoped that his comrade did not get the task of being an evil spirit and kill people, and Dujo hinted that the guy would not be too smoothly if it was true. Our hero pretended to be just joking, and emphasized that he trusted his friend, because official employees would not kill innocent people. The guy still did not lose vigilance, and calculated that within 10 meters, with an increase in anger, an angel killer would probably be able to kill an employee of the bureau. Dujo, with a smile, noted that the guesses of our hero are interesting, but he assured that he certainly did not receive such a task, and offered to check it in any possible way. The main character decided to still trust his comrade and admitted that bloody traces were just a trap to catch people. He again talked about the fact that the evil spirit, obviously, would hide the bodies of the dead people in the mattress, repeating his tragic fate. It was for this that the guy forged that inscription on the curtains, because the evil spirit would not cut off his head. But if the evil spirit nevertheless complies with the rules, then Fan Xiao created a trap, which indirectly confirms that the spirit was actually a person playing a role. Dujo asked if the young man was completely confident in his abilities to defeat the evil spirit. But he added that this was a big condition in all that was that the evil spirit was just fiction. At this moment, the bureau employee demonstrated an E-rank item called an evolutionary paper cup for communication. He explained that this thing can provide a connection in the same spatial area, which has become a good substitution for radio, which cannot be brought to the dungeon. Dujo was very interested in the fact that everyone tried to avoid an evil spirit, but the main character decided to provoke him and deal with him, so the employee decided to help in this matter. In the end, he decided to ask why the guy was so sure that the evil spirit was just fiction. Our hero was just thinking that the probability of this is great, due to the fact that such supernatural things cannot appear in the E-rank dungeon. The bureau employee hoped that the young man would be lucky that night, and asked him to inform him if something serious happened. Fan Xiao smiled broadly, and asked his friend not to worry about it. Meanwhile, it was already 10 o'clock in the evening, so the hotel corridors were shrouded in heavy darkness. The woman who chose the 9th floor for herself was barricaded in her room, and tried to convince herself that she was not afraid of any spirits. But she did not succeed. Suddenly she calmed down because she tried to listen to strange sounds behind the door of her room. It turned out that it was a knock on the door, because of which the woman was seriously scared, because it meant the arrival of the evil spirit. She understood that her main task was to hold the door, and in no case open it. At that moment, the woman felt someone else's presence in her room, and began to suspect that she was not alone here. The woman quickly raised her head and saw that some girl was already hanging over her. In the end, an evil spirit attacked a defenseless lady, because of which she screamed very loudly. Meanwhile, Miss, who lived just a floor below, heard some suspicious sounds that came the rooms of her ally. The next day came and our hero with his comrade discussed that, it seems, no incidents occurred yesterday. Dujo confirmed that he also had nothing to happen, so he began to suspect that the guy was still mistaken in his guesses, and the evil spirit was actually in this hotel. They quickly went down on the elevator to the main hall, and saw that a considerable number of players had already gathered there. All people immediately paid attention to the arrivals. Meanwhile, the main character noted that they had become quite early. The guy was surprised that only 2 people came, because it seems they did not read someone. Another player explained that they lacked 2 young lovers and the woman who screamed all the time that she wanted to live together. Miss began to get a little nervous, and hoped that nothing happened to them. At that moment, the man said that he did not know whether these people were in trouble. But yesterday he almost fell into such a situation. He stated that yesterday at night, an evil spirit knocked on him, so he immediately broke his things to give a signal. But no one came to the rescue. Then the players began to say that they also knocked on them yesterday, but their ally did not suit them anyway. The man thought that all this was a lie, so he asked them to come up with something believable, and now he refused to get together with such a worthless team. Miss was still whether to assemble a team or not, but last night they really knocked on the door to her, and a signal from a man sounded only 2 minutes later, so she was very unsafe to leave her room. The angry player was still sure that his ally was just looking for an excuse so as not to help. Then the young man intervened in the conversation, who noted that there was nothing dangerous in the fact that they simply knocked on the door. The main character listened to his teammates, and once again asked if the evil spirit came to them last night. Miss, frightened by everything that happened around, has already concluded that all the same evil spirits really exist. In the end, Fan Xiao said that he needed something to admit, so he asked the team not to be angry with him. He decided right now to declare that he had forged that record on the curtain. All players were really shocked by the fact that the main character for some reason took such a step. They immediately began to ask what the young man was planning, that he had to fake evidence for their mission. Fan Xiao explained that he created this hint in order to see if these evil spirits exist. But now the answer was clear to him. He came to the conclusion that there was no evil spirits at all, that the whole team was shocked, so they did not answer his words. If these were real perfumes, they certainly would not act according to the hints of our hero. So he had only one option left, which was that one of the players received a task. Now they had to find who received the mission to pretend to be an evil spirit and kill all the players. The players immediately began to make excuses and say that they certainly did not pretend. But in the end, one of the guys said that Fan Xiao himself could be such a person. The main character immediately explained that he would not have to admit about the curtain, and tonight he would just kill all the players. Du Zhou immediately tried to stop this quarrel, because the conclusion was such that there was a spirit among them, which means that each of the team could be suspected. The guy tried to explain in simple words and said that this is a game similar to the Mafia, with only some differences. In the Mafia at night, werewolves are always killed. But in this game, as soon as the player understands that he is not a spirit, he is not so terrible. Now the team members realize that the main thing for them is to understand that this is a person, and just stop being afraid. So they immediately raise their morale. The guy also added that they now have 3 more people whose fate is unknown, so they need to check what happened to them. The man believed that they did not need to strain, because everything was and so obvious, since these people still did not go down. But then our hero decided to simply intimidate this player. The rest of the team watched this from the side, and was also a little scared, so they didn't want to argue with Fan Xiao more. Having reassured everyone, the guy explained that he could understand who the evil spirit is from the team as soon as he finds the body. In the end, he was able to convince all participants, so they were not against going in search of missing people. Fan Xiao said that this was all that he wanted to say, so he invited everyone to choose on their own whether they would believe him or not. Du Zhou continued to look after his comrade and could not understand what he really conceived. After some time, their team was already able to search hundreds of rooms, which was almost half, but still could not find any bodies. In one room, our hero still heard some strange sounds that immediately forced him to turn around. It turned out that he was a bald man who immediately used an arrogant door handle to lock the room. An ominous smirk immediately appeared on this player's face, and Fan Xiao, excited, asked what he was going to do. The man explained that this E-rank object completely blocks sounds both outside and inside. Our hero immediately directly asked how the player pretended to be an evil spirit and killed 3 players. The dummy evil spirit admitted that he killed only a woman, and that couple broke the rules and was simply wiped with the game. Then the young man decided to ask why the man did not immediately attack him last night. Everything was that the evil spirit had one object that allows him to see an approximate chance of victory against a particular player. So he saw that our hero was too strong for battle. Fan Xiao understood his intentions and asked why the man decided to act now if the chance of victory did not change. In fact, the man understood that he had no choice, because our hero himself forced him to attack him because of his cunning plans. He planned to kill the protagonist and then 2 more players, after which his task will finally be completed. The main character made sure that in this game there were the same rules as in the classical Mafia, and noticed that his opponent was chatting too much. Fan Xiao was so confident in his guesses and forces that he did not notice at all that some strange force began to envelop him. The man explained that the game gave him an object called Toxic Fog, the effect of which takes a little time, and in the end thanked the guy for obediently helping to win time. Now the young man perfectly understood all the meanness of his opponent, and began to feel that his body was gradually paralyzed. Meanwhile, the villain quickly put on a mask in order to escape from the place of his crime as quickly as possible. It turns out that on it was a set of an evil spirit, after putting on which you can turn into a monster, walk through the walls and hide, increasing your physical and mental power,